yes, Europe, NATO countries in Europe could very easily provide the level of support which would mean that Russia would not be able to push further.
Well, joining me now is Sir Grant Shapps, of course, former Conservative Defence Secretary. Hello to you.
Good morning.
The UK has been a leader in defending Ukraine ever since the invasion. Successive governments, both Conservative and Labour, have taken that position. But is our voice rather louder than our real capabilities?
Well, unfortunately, the answer is yes overall, but partly, or in no small part, because of the way that this potential peace deal is being arranged, more than for lack of military will or capability. In other words, if what is put in place is a peace deal that frankly is unsustainable and everyone knows all it is Putin taking a break before intending to push west, then that isn't something that we can go defend because it's not a real peace. It's merely a break, a pause, a half time, if you like, in the overall process.
I suppose the answer is that if we were part of a coalition of the willing with troops deployed, that would be a deterrent, but it would also be a trigger so that if the Russians were to advance further into Ukraine or indeed elsewhere to the west, they would know that they would be triggering effectively Article 5.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, look at the overall deal, and you'll see why. Obviously, we don't know the shape of how this thing will look in the end if it comes about, but it's fundamentally flawed. You know, we have, as the West, I think, a duty to say to European countries who are being threatened by an autocrat, invaded by an autocrat, hey, we're on your side, and that means holding out NATO membership for them. I mean, this is the extraordinary thing that not only does it appear that this deal will somehow say, well, all right, you've got some of this land in an ill-gotten way, but you can keep it. But it also says, and by the way, we won't properly defend you in the future because we won't allow this country to become part of NATO. And that is an historic level of mistake that is apparently, if everything we read is true, about to be made. And that's happening because we haven't taken care of our own defence and security over a very long period in time. And yes, I do mean including our times in office, but I mean more broadly across Europe. And so we've allowed a country, America, who are not even on our continent, to write the borders of our own continent.
But
We
I mean, the
must never
question
let
is,
that happen again.
in practical terms, can Ukraine, with the level of support that without America, uh, the UK and its coalition, the willing, are prepared to give, can Ukraine actually resist Russia?
Well, I think the key word there was prepared. The answer is yes to your question. So, yes, Europe, NATO countries in Europe, could very easily provide the level of support which would mean that Russia would not be able to push further. Yes, we could provide that support. Are we prepared to? Are we prepared to make that actually relatively minor sacrifice to make sure that the borders of Europe can be maintained against an invader? I'm not sure. Actually, the evidence so far, and I mean this over a long period of time, has been that we're not prepared to stand up for it. We never stood up for it when Putin invaded Crimea, part of Ukraine, and 10 years later, we suffered the consequences. 8 years later, we suffered the consequences when Putin took that as a signal he could carry on invading other parts of Europe.
I mean, that, of course,
Ukraine.
was under the Conservative watch.
As I say, I don't make it as a political point at all. Absolutely. I was critical then. I said at the time, why aren't we more exercised about this? Because, we've seen this throughout history. If you just kind of let people, roll you over and you don't, well, it's only a little bit, it's only Crimea, it's only this, it's only that, eventually you find that, as we found before, last century, Poland's invaded next, and they are the next country in line here. So you've got to stop him, you know, at the, at the first point, not at the kind of now it's too late. And there's no way in which Putin will stop other than by force. And there's simply no other way to do this. And actually, we're very lucky. Ukraine is prepared to fight this kind of on all our behalves. And we ought to be able to, look them in the face and say that we will back them come what may to keep the borders of their country intact.
As you know, this present government uh, reviewed the situation and said that the UK does need to indeed be spending more on its defence. We're now getting details of the budget overall. Are they living up to their word?
Unfortunately, not. I warmly welcome the idea that we move to 5% of GDP spent on defence. Is exactly what we need to be doing. And by the way, I think it will be economically good for us as well. It's not an argument you often hear made, but you look at the most successful democratic nations in the world, they tend to actually spend more on their defence and they invent new technologies and what have you in the process. But actually, what we're hearing from the defence chiefs of great concern that the money is not actually coming forward. And you take Wednesday's budget as an example. I didn't hear any reference to defence at all, unless I missed it. Meaning that the money doesn't seem to be flowing this year, meaning that actually cuts will be taking place in real time in the
I think the
MOD at the
OBR
moment.
said that pledges were unfunded on defence.
Yeah, that is a real concern. This, as I've written actually in the Sunday Times this morning, this 5% pledge increasingly looks like it was a pledge made to placate Donald Trump rather than deter Vladimir Putin, and that is a worry. I mean, in a sense, however it's made, but it feels a bit like the West playing for time here, or Europe playing for time here, hoping it might be able to get away without spending it. But if we do that, we'll live to regret it because our very way of life, our democracies, are under threat in a way that I just want to say, wake up, West. Look what's happening here. Putin doesn't want us to live in a democratic society. China has no interest. They only want to sustain the Communist Party. We have to understand that this is existential to our futures.
Grant Chaps, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.